The handcuffs bite down hard, steel on bone, colder than the midnight air. Hands behind your back. Now. The command slices through the static hum of an empty train station. Have you ever wondered what a single moment, a single command, could cost a person everything? Red and blue lights strobe across the cracked pavement, painting ghostly stripes over the insignia on Major Lila Brennan's coat. She shivers, breath fogging. Her jaw tightens, but she doesn't flinch. Camera phones blink awake in the shadows. Strangers watching, recording, whispering to each other. That's a soldier. What's going on? Did she do something? Their voices flutter, echoing off iron columns and dirty tile. Lila's eyes scan the faces. No allies here. No explanations. There's no time to explain. Please trust me, she says, her voice clear, unwavering. She meets the gaze of a trembling teenage girl holding her phone just a little higher than the rest. Pause for emphasis. The girl lowers her eyes but keeps recording. Somewhere beyond the platform, a train horn wails, long and distant. A warning, or maybe a challenge. Someone in the shadows lowers their phone, eyes wide, whispering, "What if she's not the villain here?" If you're watching right now, ask yourself, what if the person sworn to protect you is mistaken for the enemy? Comment "justice" before the story unfolds, because what happens next might just change the way you see everyone in uniform. Every story you think you know is just a page away from changing. Major Lila Brennan used to wake before sunrise, years of habit pushing her from sleep before the world was ready to stir. On mornings like this, Arroyo Creek felt like a town that didn't want to be noticed, a place of mist on mailbox posts, rain skittering across cracked concrete, and the faint, metallic taste of nerves. Lila's life was a routine of small rituals now. A cup of black coffee poured slow, the scrape of boots on old floorboards, a quick check on her son, Max, still buried beneath his comforter. She wore her uniform like armor even when she was out of sight. 38, eyes edged with the kind of tired you don't shake off, and medals tucked away where few ever saw them, except her father, Walter. He watched from his battered recliner, crossword in his lap, the brim of his old army cap pulled low. "Working late again?" he called, not looking up, pencil tapping a restless staccato on the arm of the chair. Lila zipped her worn duffel, careful not to let the anxiety in her hands reach her voice. "It's not routine, Dad. There's a case. It matters." She tried to keep it light, but Walter's silence said he'd already heard the edge beneath her words. Max wandered in, still in pajamas, hair a soft brown tangle. He hesitated at the kitchen doorway, thumb hooked on the strap of his toy backpack. "You'll be home before dark, right?" His question landed heavier than it should. Lila knelt, feeling the ache of old injuries flare in her knee. "I hope so, buddy. But if not, you remember what we say about strength?" He nodded, almost solemn. Strength means doing the right thing, even when you're scared. He'd learned that one by heart, the way kids of military families learn things most adults never do. A few moments later, as she slipped her service pistol into the holster, Lila paused before the small memorial on the living room shelf. A folded flag, a photo of her late husband. Smiling in uniform, their arms around each other, a future still ahead of them. Pause for emphasis. She heard his voice sometimes in the back of her mind. "Why did you risk your career, Lila?" She always had the same answer, whispered in the quiet before action. "Because right is rarely easy, and if it ever feels easy, it's probably not right." Her phone buzzed. A secure message, just 2 words. "Move now." She grabbed the duffel, squared her shoulders, and walked out into the soft morning rain. The door clicked shut behind her, a sound that always felt too final. She glanced back once. Max's small face behind the lace curtain, her father's silhouette in the window, a half-raised hand that could have been a wave or a salute. Driving through Arroyo Creek, she watched the sleepy town drift past. A closed laundromat, a rusted flagpole, the distant siren of someone else's emergency. She wondered, not for the first time, how many lives had been changed by men and women in uniforms. How many stories had never made the news. Lila's current mission was as quiet as it was dangerous. Protect Eli Torres, a young Army veteran, quiet and wiry, his haunted eyes older than his years. Eli had come back from Afghanistan with more scars than medals, and now he was the only one brave or desperate enough to testify against a syndicate siphoning benefits from the families of soldiers. There was no glory in this work, no headlines, just risk. Her orders were simple, but simple didn't mean safe. Keep Eli alive. Don't trust anyone outside the task force, and never let the syndicate sense you're close. Even as she repeated these rules, Lila felt their weight settle in her chest. As the rain came down harder and the sky brightened to that iron gray before sunrise, Lila Brennan knew this day would ask more from her than any battle she'd fought overseas. She gripped the wheel tighter and set her jaw. One more mission. One more chance to do what was right, no matter what it cost. Pause for breath, transition to rising action. Lila drove south, rain snaking down the windshield, the world outside reduced to smeared neon and puddle light. Eli sat beside her in the passenger seat, silent, arms wrapped around his midsection, as if trying to make himself invisible. She could feel his nerves in the air, a tension crackling between them. Two soldiers in a civilian world that had no patience for ghosts. At the red light, she checked the mirror. No headlights for 3 blocks, but that meant nothing. She'd learned in Afghanistan that the enemy rarely announced itself. Her phone buzzed, an encrypted call flashing across the cracked screen. She glanced at Eli, then answered on speaker, voice low. "Go ahead." On the line, her father's voice, filtered and weak. "You need to keep moving, Lila. I caught something. A bounce on your phone's IMEI, unmarked tower near Route 4. They're closing in, kid." She gripped the steering wheel tighter, the words digging cold into her chest. Eli shifted, uncertain. "Are we safe?" His voice was quiet, careful, as if afraid to break some unseen spell. "No one's safe tonight," she said, not unkindly, but honest. "But you stick with me. We keep moving, we keep breathing. That's what we do." Pause for emphasis. But who would you trust if every shadow looked like a threat, and every ally could turn on you? As they pulled off the main drag and into a dark strip mall parking lot, Lila cut the engine, listening. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling motor and the rain, drumming steady on the roof. She handed Eli a protein bar from the glove box. Always the same routine, always fuel for the next sprint. Somewhere in the shadows, headlights flickered to life, sweeping briefly across their car before vanishing again. Eli's knuckles whitened on the bar. "Do you ever just wish it would all go away?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. Lila hesitated, then replied, "Wishing doesn't make it so. You want a normal life, you have to fight for it, even if that fight is just keeping yourself together one more hour." Pause. She looked over, catching his eye. "If we splinter now, they win. You understand?" He nodded, the ghost of something like resolve in his eyes. Her phone chimed again. This time it wasn't family, but a notification. Her name, trending. Dirty Major blared across the screen, attached to a video grainy and edited, showing her pulling Eli into a car at gunpoint. There was no audio, only text overlays. Is this who we trust with our veterans? And Major Brennan, rogue or hero? The comments spiraled, some defending her, most accusing. It spread like wildfire, faster than the truth could travel. Lila shut off the phone, chest tightening. Wardell, she muttered. He wants to burn me down before I even get my side out. Eli glanced at her, fear bleeding into anger. If they come after you, I'll talk. I'll tell everyone what happened. That's not your job, she said, softer now. Your job is to survive. Pause. A siren screamed somewhere distant, thunder rolling in after. She started the car again, tires hissing as she guided them out into the rain-slick streets, zigzagging through alleys and service roads, watching every rear-view angle. The day slipped by in fragments. A hasty coffee and a greasy spoon diner, always with one eye on the door. A gas station stop where Lila checked the undercarriage for trackers, the air thick with diesel and fried food. At the diner, a woman in faded army blues pressed a note into Lila's palm, then vanished before Lila could read it. For a heartbeat, Lila wondered, was she a friend or another set of eyes for the enemy? She never found out, but the handwriting looked hauntingly familiar, a ghost from training days, reminding her how war can follow you home. They moved through Arroyo Creek's edges, never lingering, always in motion. Eli fell into a kind of silent rhythm, following orders, trusting her, but the cracks were there. At sunset, Lila parked beneath a flickering streetlight. The car steamed from their breath. She dialed her father's number, just to hear a voice that tethered her to some version of normal, the call barely connected, his tone watery with fatigue. Remember, Lila, he said quietly, courage isn't the absence of fear, but fighting for what's right, even when fear is all you've got left. She closed her eyes, letting the words settle. For a second, she felt the old ache in her chest, the one she thought she'd left behind in the desert, the one that whispered she'd never be enough. Rain hammered the windshield as a newscast crackled from the radio, listing her name among persons of interest in a possible kidnapping and conspiracy. She reached up, tugging the dog tags at her neck, feeling the cool metal press into her palm. She looked at Eli, his face drawn, shadows clinging beneath his eyes. We're almost through this, she told him, though she wasn't sure who needed convincing more. Neither of them could know. In less than an hour, trust would be shattered again. He nodded, drawing in a long, ragged breath. If we get through this, what then? We keep fighting for the next thing that matters, she said. That's all any of us can do. Pause for emphasis. Thunder rattled the windows. Lila stared out at the city lights smeared by rain, resolve hardening behind her tired eyes. Tomorrow wasn't promised, but neither was surrender. She let the car idle, feeling the weight of fatigue settling in her shoulders, the dull ache behind her temples that never fully went away. The rhythm of the rain against the roof became its own kind of countdown, marking time in a world where every second brought fresh risk. At a red light near the freight yard, she caught sight of a patrol car creeping past. Lights off, windows dark. Her heart thudded in her chest, a soldier's instinct, honed on years of not trusting what seemed ordinary. She forced herself to breathe slow, counting backward from 10, eyes never leaving the mirror. Eli tried to joke, voice hoarse. You know, I used to think running from trouble was something you only did in the movies." He glanced at her, searching for any sign that this could become less terrifying. "What if we just ditched the car, hopped a bus out of state?" Lila shook her head, a thin smile. "We're not running. We're buying time. There's a difference." Her tone softened as she reached for the flask in the console, offering him a sip of cold coffee. "You did good today. You followed orders, even when you wanted to bolt. That counts." His hands shook a little as he took the flask. "I keep thinking if I just kept my mouth shut." She cut him off, gentle but firm. "You spoke up because it was right. That's what makes you a soldier, Eli. Not the uniform, not the medals, the choice to stand when it would have been easier to disappear." Pause. They pulled off the road behind an abandoned strip mall, hiding the car between two dumpsters. Lila popped the trunk and checked the second burner phone. One message, all numbers. A code only she and her father used. She dialed, pressed the phone to her ear, and the static gave way to his voice. "You're not alone out there," Walter rasped. "Wardell's pressuring his friends on the city council, trying to get a warrant out for your arrest. Don't come home, kid. It's not safe." Lila swallowed hard, forcing steel into her tone. "I'm not leaving you or Max. I just need time to get Eli to the drop. Can you check the security feeds around Harrison Avenue? If they move him, I need a heads up." Walter grumbled his agreement, and the line clicked dead. She tucked the phone away, breathing slow, willing herself not to break. Eli caught her eye, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Why do you trust me?" he asked quietly. Everybody else just wants me to disappear." She met his gaze, steady. "Because I've seen what happens when good people stay quiet. I promised your mother I'd get you home. That means I don't get to quit, no matter how ugly it gets." Pause for emphasis. The night dragged on in pockets of anxiety and exhaustion. They slept in shifts, Lila dozing in the driver's seat, Eli hunched against the door. Every noise, wind rattling trash, distant sirens, the sudden shriek of a cat, jerked them awake. Just before dawn, her phone buzzed again. A video this time. She watched it in silence, jaw set. It was grainy footage from a security camera. A woman in fatigues, Lila's face unmistakable, yanking Eli into the car. The words, "Rogue Major," burned across the screen, Wardle's voice in the background. "We have reason to believe Major Brennan has gone off book. Approach with caution." The news cycle spiraled. Talk radio dissected her life in real time. Some called her a hero, most a liability. Her inbox filled with threats, a few messages of hope. She deleted them all, her focus narrowing to one thing: get Eli to safety. They ate breakfast in a cramped motel bathroom. Plastic spoons scraping the bottom of oatmeal cups. Steam curling in the flickering fluorescent light. Lila washed her face in the cold tap, staring at herself in the mirror. The scar beneath her left eye, the lines of fatigue, the defiance that hadn't faded even after years of compromise. "You look tired," Eli said, managing a small, sad grin. "Heroes always do," she replied, deadpan, and the tension eased just a little. Pause. The rain eased as morning broke, but the air felt heavier, thick with warning. Lila checked the clock, counting down the hours to the handoff. She loaded her sidearm, checked her gear, and tucked the dog tags beneath her shirt. Eli watched, then asked, "When this is over, what happens to you?" She shrugged, honest. "Doesn't matter, as long as you get a chance to start over. That's why we fight, Eli. Not for medals or press releases, for each other. For the shot at a tomorrow nobody else thinks you deserve. Pause. The first text came at 8:14 a.m. Location changed. Meet at rail station, alone. No signature, but she recognized the code, her father's subtle way of saying trap. Lila's hand trembled, just for a moment, as she keyed in a response. Copy. ETA 20 minutes. Eyes open. She looked at Eli, the unspoken question passing between them. Are you ready? He nodded, and together they slipped out into the gray morning, shoulders squared against whatever came next. The train station wasn't empty this time. Dull fluorescent lights hummed overhead, bathing the cracked tile in sickly blue. Rain clung to the edges of the overhang, dripping in steady rhythm, pooling where boots had already left tracks. Lila and Eli moved fast, breath misting in the early morning chill, scanning every shadow. She'd rehearsed this handoff 100 times in her head, every variable, every fallback plan. But something in the air felt wrong, electric. They crossed the main platform. A lone vending machine hummed near a row of payphones, and a group of teenagers huddled by the benches, pretending not to watch. Lila's hand hovered near her hip, the grip of her sidearm a cold comfort beneath the coat. Eli walked half a step behind, his eyes flicking nervously to the edges of the platform. I thought you said your friend would be here, he whispered. She will, Lila replied, voice barely more than breath. Just stay close. Don't! The sentence died as a black SUV rolled to a stop at the curb, headlights slicing the morning haze. The rear door opened, and before Lila could move, two figures in plain jackets rushed Eli, grabbing him with practiced force. Eli shouted, a raw, terrified sound, and Lila lunged forward, heart pounding. She caught a flash of his face, wild with panic, as the men hauled him toward the SUV. Pause for emphasis. She drew her weapon. Let him go. Her voice cracked like a whip, sharp enough to turn heads. For a split second, everything slowed. The teenagers' phones came up, screens glowing. The men hesitated, just long enough for her to see the patch on one sleeve. Local police. A figure stepped from behind the SUV. Officer Wardell, face tight, eyes hard. He held up his hands in a gesture of weary authority. Stand down, Major. You're under arrest for abduction, endangering a protected witness, and obstruction of justice. The words hit like a physical blow. Lila's pulse thundered in her ears. What are you talking about? He's not a suspect. He's in danger. Wardell's mouth twisted in something close to pity. You think I don't know what's been going on? You've gone rogue, Lila. We have orders. His voice dropped, barely audible. Hand over your weapon. Lila looked at Eli, now halfway inside the SUV, his mouth forming her name. She saw the resignation in his eyes. The moment hope flickered out. She had no choice. Slowly, she set her sidearm on the pavement, raising her hands. Wardell nodded, and one of the officers stepped in, wrenching her arms behind her, snapping the cuffs tight. The metal bit into her skin, cruel and cold. Pause for emphasis. Phones recorded every second. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Is that the Major? The one from the news?" The chorus of voices rose, a tide she couldn't fight. As she was hauled upright, Lila locked eyes with Wardell. She kept her voice steady. You know he'll die if you take him now. You know that. Wardell leaned in, close enough she could smell his aftershave, and whispered, You bet on honor. I bet on survival. His grip tightened just slightly. You were never meant to win this. Eli struggled, but a gloved hand covered his mouth. Lila caught a single glimpse, the last maybe, of his battered face as the SUV's door slammed shut. The vehicle peeled away, tires splashing through dirty rainwater. Lila fought to memorize every detail. The make and model, a broken taillight, the license plate, 7D4K12, burning it into memory with a soldier's precision. If nothing else, she would not let that slip away. Social media lit up within minutes. Hashtags multiplied. Dirty Major, corrupt soldier, justice or vigilante. The video of her arrest spread in real time, pixelated and raw. She watched herself, face tight, hair soaked, silent as they shoved her into the back of the cruiser. Inside the car, the world shrank to a box of hard plastic and foggy windows. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the lights of Arroyo Creek until everything looked like a watercolor painting left out in a storm. Lila's wrists ached, her heart hammered, but she held her head high, staring at her own reflection, daring herself not to break. Wardle's words echoed, but she clung to something older, deeper, a lesson learned in sand and steel. The truth has a longer memory than fear. The car rolled forward, city lights sliding past. For a moment, time felt suspended. A soldier at the mercy of the system, a good man taken by shadows, a promise in danger of being broken. The future, suddenly, was nothing but rain and blurred neon. The cruiser rolled through the city in silence, windshield wipers scraping back and forth, rain drumming harder now against the metal roof. Lila stared straight ahead, fingers flexing against the cold bite of the cuffs, willing herself not to show weakness. Outside, the world moved on as if none of this mattered. A man with an umbrella hurrying a toddler across the street, an old woman dragging groceries home. No one looked twice at the black and white as it slid through traffic. She tried to steady her breathing, the old training returning, her mind running through every detail she could remember. License plate, height, accents, faces, the cracked plastic badge on the second man's belt. She forced it all into a mental grid, refusing to let panic eat away at her focus. At a stoplight, Wardle pulled alongside in his own car. Their eyes met through the glass, just for a moment. He looked away first. The officer in the front seat cleared his throat, not quite looking at her. "You want to say anything? Make a statement?" Lila shook her head. "Not to you." Pause for emphasis. He grunted and flicked on the radio. A talk show host's voice blared, dissecting the morning's viral video, lines cutting through the air like knives. "Is Major Brennan a rogue agent, or is she protecting something we haven't been told?" Another caller, voice shaking with emotion. "She saved my nephew 2 years ago. There has to be more to this." The voices blurred together. Lila felt the ache build in her chest, a cocktail of shame, fury, and something like betrayal. She pressed her forehead to the glass, letting the chill clear her head. The station loomed ahead, gray stone under flickering sodium lamps. Crowds were already gathered, news vans parked at odd angles, lenses hungrily tracking the cruiser's approach. She kept her gaze level as they pulled her out, cameras flashing, microphones shoved toward her lips. "Major Brennan, did you really abduct that witness? Is this a cover-up? Do you have anything to say to your son?" The last question made her stumble, but she caught herself, jaw set. She searched the crowd for a familiar face. Her father, Max, saw nothing but strangers and strangers' eyes. Inside, they walked her through the booking process with rote efficiency. Mugshot, fingerprints, the plastic feel of a bench beneath her as someone filled out endless forms. Wardle stood nearby, arms crossed, face blank. He waited until the others left, then leaned close, voice almost a growl. "You were always too stubborn for your own good, Lila. I told you before. Some things are bigger than you, should have listened. She stared at him, meeting his eyes without flinching. You'll never outrun the truth. You can smear my name. You can hide behind your badge, but you know what you are. You know what you did. Wardle's lips curled. Maybe. But nobody else does. Not anymore. He nodded to the guard, and they led her away. In the holding cell, the world shrank to cinder-block walls and the slow tick of a clock she couldn't see. Somewhere, thunder rattled the windows, echoing down the hallway. Lila sank onto the bench, staring at her hands, still shaking, still marked by the cuffs. She closed her eyes, replaying every moment, searching for something she might have missed. Eli's face, Wardle's whisper, the rain-slicked SUV pulling away. She whispered to herself, so softly even she could barely hear it. License plate 7D4K12, broken tail light, 2 men, police patches, local accents. Don't forget. She repeated it again and again, the words a lifeline in the dark. Outside, the storm moved on, but the chill remained. Lila sat, spine straight, refusing to let despair win, the old stubbornness rising again, a quiet promise burning in her chest. If there was any way back from this, she would find it. If justice cost everything, she'd still pay. The truth waited, patient as rain. Pause for emphasis. The cell was small, the walls close. Cinderblock painted the kind of gray that made you forget daylight. Lila sat on the hard bench, hands in her lap, wrists still lined with angry red marks from the cuffs. Her dog tags, taken, sealed in a bag somewhere, felt like a missing weight at her neck. The silence pressed in, broken only by the dull hum of a vent and the shouts of distant voices echoing off concrete. She tried not to think about how many hours had passed, or how Max was waking up to a world where his mother's name trended for all the wrong reasons. The thought made her chest tighten. She remembered the morning at the door, his eyes wide with hope and worry. "I'll come home," she'd promised. Pause for emphasis. Promises, she thought, are a kind of ration. You give them out one at a time. Hope you never run out. But hope is discipline, and discipline was something she still had in her blood. She closed her eyes, breathing deep, counting backwards. Training, muscle memory, the rituals that got her through other hard places. Barracks in the desert, cold nights when every sound was threat or loss. She whispered to herself, not caring if anyone heard. Justice costs, but so does silence. The words floated in the air, half prayer, half warning. Far from the cell, her father sat hunched over his battered laptop, screen aglow in the darkness of Lila's kitchen. Walter's hands shook as he typed, piecing together lines of code, tracing IPs, sifting through social media posts and city traffic feeds. The house felt empty, Max asleep in his room, the ghost of Lila's husband staring from the mantel. Walter talked to him sometimes, in the quiet, as if answers might echo back. "You'd be proud, you know," he muttered. "She's got your stubborn streak." The digital trail was faint, a blip here, a ping there. Most of it dead ends, smoke screens set up by Wardell and his friends. But then, just before dawn, Walter found a frame in a parking lot camera, the SUV, the broken tail light, and the license plate Lila had whispered to herself again and again, 7D4K12. Pause for emphasis. He called in a favor, an old friend who owed him from his days in Army intelligence. The hacker on the other end was young, sharp, half awake. "You sure about this plate, Walt?" "I'm sure. My girl's never forgotten a number in her life." In less than an hour, they had a location, a rundown warehouse on the edge of the industrial park. Inside that warehouse, Eli was alone, hands bound, lips cracked, fear threading through every breath. But somewhere under the fear was something else, an ember of resolve, a memory of Lila's words in the rain. If we splinter now, they win. He studied the window, the rusted hinges on the door, the knot at his wrists. He remembered training, too. The small things. How to slip a cord. How to leave a mark. He worked quietly, inching a sharp edge of broken zip tie against a nail on the floor. Sweat beaded on his brow. When a guard's phone buzzed, Eli shifted, listening. The man grumbled, left the door open for half a minute. That was all Eli needed. He slipped the cord, edged to the far wall, and scratched a simple message. Code from his old unit. A message Lila would understand if anyone ever found it. Never give up, Major. Back in her cell, Lila felt the shift before she heard it. Footsteps, louder, more urgent, the clang of doors opening down the hallway. She stood, spine straightening, old reflexes kicking in. There was always a moment before a battle, before you knew if you'd fall or hold your ground. Pause for emphasis. A guard unlocked her door, voice gruff. You have a visitor, your father and someone from the state. Says it's urgent. Lila blinked against the sudden light as they led her down the corridor. Outside, police cars converged on the warehouse, blue lights splitting the dawn. Walter and the agent greeted her in the interview room, files thick with evidence. We found them, Lila, her father said quietly, his voice trembling. You saved him, just by remembering. She let out a long, slow breath, not trusting herself to speak. The storm had broken, but the ground was still unsteady. In that moment, hope felt less like a promise and more like the beginning of something real. When the dust settled and the last statement was signed, Lila stood once again in the gray-walled hallway of the police headquarters, no longer a suspect, no longer in chains. The facts spoke for themselves. Eli's coded message, Walter's digital trail, and the evidence they'd found in the warehouse unraveled Wardle's web for all to see. News trucks circled like vultures at first, feeding on scandal, but now the story shifted, her story, rippled out in voices softer, more uncertain, and sometimes apologetic. In the aftermath, the town that had doubted her began to remember who she was. A neighbor left fresh bread at her door. Max's teacher pressed her hand at the school gate and whispered, "You kept your promise." A few of the harshest critics online deleted their comments or replaced them with quiet words. "Sorry, we were wrong." Eli healed quickly. The shadows in his eyes faded bit by bit, replaced by the steadiness that only comes from surviving the worst. He thanked Lila awkwardly at first, then more boldly. "You taught me something, Major. Not about bravery, about staying when everyone else leaves." Lila smiled, small, tired, but true. "I wouldn't have made it if you hadn't believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." The department offered Lila an award, a press conference, even a parade. She shook her head, gentle but firm. Let the real story be about those who kept watch in the dark, the ones who never get named. For a while, reporters called at all hours. She stopped answering. She cooked for Max, walked her father to the park, cleaned the dust from the flag above the mantel. Quiet routines, deliberate steps, none of them easy, but all of them real. Sometimes, late at night, Lila stood on the porch, breath steaming in the cold, and watched the sunrise begin to chase the dark out of Arroyo Creek. She would trace the outline of her scars with her fingertips, feeling each as proof. That courage is invisible, but it always leaves a mark. pause for emphasis. When the final paperwork was done and her name was clear, Lila left the police headquarters just as the first light broke over the rooftops. The morning was still, the sky pale, the air sharp and clean. She paused on the steps, head high, shoulders straight. Her heart was tired, but there was peace in its stead. She looked neither left nor right. She simply walked forward. So I'll ask you, listening now, what would you do if justice meant standing alone? If the right thing cost you everything but your own truth? Breath. Would you keep going, even when your voice shakes and your friends disappear? Or would you walk away, wishing someone else had the courage to take that step? The world doesn't change by accident. It changes because someone, maybe you, refuses to give in. If Lila's story moved you, if you've ever stood alone for what's right, leave a comment or share this with someone who needs to hear it. Every quiet act of courage counts. Sometimes the world changes not with a shout, but with a single steady step into the dawn.